New evacuation orders are in effect in Lebanon's capital as Israel's military vows to keep hitting Hezbollah targets. Lebanese authorities report dozens of people were killed on Thursday, more than 1,400 in the past few weeks. And we're following.
최근 이스라엘과 교전 중인 레바논에서 한국 교민 97명이 군 수송기를 타고 국내에 도착했다는 기사 보셨을 겁니다. 레바논에서 지난 3주간 1만 명의 사상자가 발생할 정도로 정말 격렬한 전쟁이 진행되고 있는데요. 그 사이 유가도 엄청난 변동성을 기록했습니다.
Now, President Biden says Washington is discussing with Israel the possibility of Israeli strikes on Iran's oil infrastructure in response to Tehran's unprecedented missile attack this week. Joe Biden's comments ended up sparking a surge in the price of crude oil, up by 5% at one point. Faisal Islam is here to
대체 중동에선 무슨 일이 벌어지고 또 유가는 어떻게 된다는 걸까요? 사건은 몇 주 전으로 거슬러 갑니다. 평화롭던 레바논에서 어느 날 갑자기 삐삐가 동시다발적으로 폭발한 것인데요. 영상 속 파란 모자를 쓴 남자를 보시죠. 식료품점에서 과일을 정리하고 있습니다. 그리고 순간 어깨에 메고 있던 가방이 폭발합니다. 다소 잔인하고 충격적인 장면인데 그 폭발 위력이 상당해서 해당 남성은 쓰러진 채 고통을 호소하고 있죠. 중요한 건 레바논에서 이날 수천 명의 사람들이 동시다발적으로 이 삐삐테러에 당했다는 것입니다. 이 충격적인 테러는 대체 누구를 겨냥한 것이었을까요?
The targets? Members of Hezbollah, a designated terror group, sworn enemies of Israel, and increasingly reliant on pagers for communication. Then, a day later, on Wednesday, a similar coordinated attack, this time on Hezbollah walkie-talkies.
For the second day, panic spread across Lebanon as more electronic devices suddenly transformed into bombs.
This presumably Israeli operation is extremely sophisticated, getting not only into the pagers, but then into the walkie-talkies.
This begins to answer the next big question. Who would do this? Israel has not taken responsibility for the attack, nor does it tend to, even when it is behind covert attacks like this. But nobody denies Israeli intelligence would certainly be capable of something on this scale. Hezbollah has blamed Israel directly, and of course, the two have been locked in conflict for years, and particularly since the October 7th attacks.
이렇듯 크고 작은 테러로 중동 지역 긴장감이 고조되어 가던 중 이스라엘이 레바논 헤즈볼라의 수장인 하산 나스랄라를 암살한 데 이어 레바논 침공을 감행하자 이란이 이스라엘을 겨냥해 탄도미사일 180여 발을 쏘며 참전했습니다. 지금까지 1만여 명이 넘는 사상자가 발생했는데 중동전쟁은 어떻게 되고 있는 걸까요?
The Israeli military says it's expanding its ground offensive against Hezbollah by moving into a new zone in the southwest of Lebanon. It says it has 15,000 soldiers deployed in the south of the country. Hezbollah has fired more than 100 rockets at the port city of Haifa in northern Israel. Amid the fighting, the deputy leader of Hezbollah has said he supports a call from Lebanon's parliament for a ceasefire with Israel. It's thought to be the first time Hezbollah has called for a ceasefire without tying it to a truce in Gaza. Well, let's get the latest from our correspondents throughout the region.
Yes, this is a very significant development about a week after they first went in on the ground into southern Lebanon for what they described as a very limited operation targeting the infrastructure of Hezbollah. They've been working in the southeast, now moving to the southwest. But the World Health Organization has been telling the BBC today that it's becoming extremely difficult now to operate health facilities in Beirut. Well, let's get the
전쟁이 계속되자 유가 시장도 크게 출렁이고 있습니다. 중동 지역 갈등 자체가 새로운 이벤트는 아니지만 석유 공급 차질 우려가 계속되며 가격 변동성도 함께 커지고 있는데요. 유가 변동 양상과 그 원인 한번 상세히 보시죠.
The price of a barrel of crude oil shot up on international markets today. It was up 5% today, and that means since the attacks, it's up 10% to over $77 a barrel on the Brent crude measure. This is still down on the year because of global economic concerns, but the spike up today occurred immediately after President Biden added to suggestions that Israel would target Iran's oil facilities. Now, the oil markets reacted to that. Iran is the 7th biggest oil exporter in the world. Most of its exports go to China. Israelis could choose to target the Iranian government's funding by hitting its oil export facilities on Karg Island, or refineries crucial for making domestic petrol supplies. Some reported petrol queues already in Iran. These could disrupt, but not necessarily upend, global energy markets. If that happens, there's enough of surplus oil production in Saudi Arabia and the UAE to make up the difference. Much attention will then focus here on the Straits of Hormuz, 28 miles wide at its narrowest point between Iran and Oman. If Iran was to try to block it, then 20 million barrels per day, or a fifth of the world's oil production, not just Iran's, but every country in the Gulf, would not be able to transit their crude oil tankers. And these days it isn't just oil. The world's dependence on Russian gas has been replaced by shipments of liquefied gas, mainly from Qatar, also needing to transit that strait. So that's the nightmare scenario.
오늘 영상에서 다룬 중동 갈등의 배경, 그리고 원유 가격 변동 양상. 보면 볼수록 마음이 무거워지는데요. 궁금하신 내용 있으시면 댓글창에 달아주시고 구독, 좋아요 부탁드리며 다음 영상으로 만나요.